Hello and welcome to the Week 3 Roundup, where I'll be bringing you a detailed summary of injury reports, waiver pickups and streaming advice. Chris Carson left the fourth quarter of Seattle's victory over Dallas having twisted his knee. An MRI today has confirmed that it's just a minor sprain and he has a chance to play this weekend. This does suggest he's still doubtful for Week 4. If he missed, journeyman Carlos Hyde would be in line to take the starting role on a run-heavy offense. Tariq Cohen suffered a torn ACL in Sunday's game that has ended his season. While this is bad news for the Bears, it does have little impact for fantasy as this backfield has already become the David Montgomery show. Devontae Adams and Julio Jones both ended up missing Sunday's games with their respective hamstring injuries. Both were decisions made on Sunday, which at least suggests they are close to playing and would be odds on for Week 4. Russell Gage and Deontay Johnson both left their respective games after being placed in the concussion protocol. Concussions are tricky to analyse. They could be good to go for Week 4 or they may have to miss several weeks. A couple of other situations which we're still waiting even just a snippet of news. Chris Godwin suffered a hamstring injury that held him out for the rest of the game. John Brown was taken out of Sunday's shootout with the Rams with a calf injury. And finally, Dallas Goedert appeared to suffer a high ankle injury that could mean he misses several weeks. While Jerick McKinnon had a good game last week for anyone that started him, it was actually the speculative ad of Jeff Wilson who had the greater fantasy performance. McKinnon is now dealing with a rib injury, but whether McKinnon plays or not, Wilson needs to be owned and is definitely startable Week 4 at home against the Eagles. After Jeff Wilson, Carlos Hyde is your best shot if you need a guy to play this week. Rex Burkhead had a great day against Las Vegas, but that backfield was an absolute mess. Too many mouths to feed here. Two players I mentioned last week, Darrell Henderson and Mike Davis, are still criminally underowned. Both exceeded expectations this week, and if they are available, put them in the conversation with Jeff Wilson for your top overall claim. At wide receiver, we have a number of very interesting rookies. Justin Jefferson may have just had his breakout performance. He's the second best wide receiver of Week 3 heading into Monday night. He was drafted in the first round, and with Stephon Diggs gone, the opportunity for him is wide open. Jefferson is absolutely the top wide receiver pick for this week. Brandon Ayuk scored as the 49ers chose to mix him into the running game with Mostert and Coleman both on IR. T. Higgins now has 15 targets over the last 2 games. Braxton Berrios has now had back-to-back performances with at least 50 yards and a score. With Perriman and Crowder out, Berrios appears to be Sam Darnold's guy. Greg Ward caught 8 of 11 targets. You can pick him up because how often are 11 targets sitting on the waiver wire? But you're probably not going to be able to play him for the next 3 weeks on the road at San Francisco, Pittsburgh, and then at home to Baltimore. Cedric Wilson came out of nowhere to claim a 100-yard game and 2 scores for Dallas. And Wilson had not logged a catch in the first 2 weeks. So it's likely this is a one-off. At tight end, Eric Ebron was an obvious beneficiary of Deontay Johnson's injury. Ebron was a first-round draft pick in 2014 and had 14 touchdowns with the Colts in 2018, so he has the pedigree to be a great fantasy player. Mo Ali Cox has put up double-digit fantasy scores in back-to-back weeks. The 6'5", 270-pound friendly giant is emerging as one of Rivers' favourite targets. Consider him a high upside option, rather than say a Logan Thomas, who has 24 targets through the first 3 weeks. That's joint second for tight ends, but has averaged just 7 points per game with that volume. Ryan Fitzpatrick came through last week with 24 points. This week the Seahawks come to town. Seattle have allowed the second most points to quarterback in the league. This won't be pretty. Fitz will surely throw a few picks, but at the end of the game you'll be happy with his score. Did anybody drop Matthew Stafford in your league? Shame on them. With Golladay back, the Lions offense actually resembled an NFL team, and they got the upset in Arizona. The Saints come to Ford Field this week, having been torn apart by the Raiders and Packers in back-to-back weeks. On defense, the Sam Darnold Jets gifted the Colts a 26-point fantasy day that followed a 15-pointer for Indianapolis the week before. Indy are trending upwards towards a season-long defense, and with Chicago, Cleveland and Cincinnati coming up, it doesn't look like this train is about to stop. If they are available in your league, they are a priority ad. Travelling to the New York Jets next are the Denver Broncos. They've not had a stellar start to the season, but as a matchup play you could obviously do much worse. The other side of this matchup, the New York Jets, could also come out with a good fantasy day, given Jeff Driscoll gave the Buccaneers 16 points last week. It's a risky one as the Jets have not been a good fantasy defense so far, but their opponents have been Buffalo, San Francisco and Indianapolis. Daniel Carson has 12, 12 and 8 points in the opening 3 games. This week his Raiders host Buffalo at home in their new dome. Kahimi Fairbairn, at home in the comfort of his dome, Fairbairn scored 10 points against the Ravens in week 2. They host the Vikings this week, who have given up the most points to fantasy kickers, 5 more per game than any other team. That's all for today. Good luck in week 4.